And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jerzee Joe. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Hey, we're this today's July 1st. It's a
Happy July.
happy July. Are you doing anything for the 4th of July weekend?
Low key, the usual picnic, swimming, the usual.
Picnic? Yeah. Weather's going to be good?
Hot and
Hot?
humid.
Well,
Hot and
good,
humid.
good for swimming. Good weather for swimming. Well, good. All right. Hey, we got, we last week we did the pod, we recorded on Monday. Today we're doing Tuesday, so it's been 8 days. And it's some incredible, a lot's been going on. By the way, one thing that isn't in the podcast notes today, but the big Trump's big beautiful bill passed the Senate today.
Wow.
So it's on its way back to the House. So it's going to, there's not a lot of room, I think, to rework it again. So I think it's either going to be a quick vote and a passage, but it may get passed by the 4th of July as Trump was hoping for. So we'll see. Today's Tuesday the 1st. They've got 2 days to get it passed. We'll see what happens. All right. All right. So anyway, so today is Tuesday, July 1st. We're going to publish this on Wednesday morning, July 2nd. And here's what we're going to try to squeeze in today, although I doubt we're going to get it all in. All right. So this week, our quote of the week is how acting rich can make you broke and how acting poor can make you rich. Um, and the stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll play a clip of Los Angeles TV news reporter claiming that the people who were setting fire to cars and throwing rocks at them last month in LA were just having fun. And we actually have a recording of that, and we'll get your opinion of that. And our runner-up, and maybe it should have been the winner, stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll play a clip of a climate activist testifying before the U.S. Senate who believes that oil company CEOs should be sent to prison for the crime of homicide, and what I believe is a huge flaw in his logic. And we'll tell you what I think the flaw in his logic is. And you'll tell me if you think that should have been our winner or not instead of the runner-up.
Okay.
We'll bring up to speed on some things that the Democrat candidate for mayor of New York City is promising to implement and elected. By the way, in your neck of the woods, has his winning the Democrat nomination been big news out in your neck of the woods?
Whose nomination?
The Zohan Mandami,
Oh no, not here. I personally have been following it, but
it hasn't made
not,
the local news out there.
no, not really. I was taking a personal interest in it though.
Okay, but it hasn't made the law, so it's kind of more
So
of a.
he won.
Well, he won the Democrat nomination.
I'm surprised.
So everybody is stunned. And by the way, and if history is any indicator, the person who wins the Democratic nomination is almost guaranteed to become the next mayor. So we'll tell you, for those who haven't heard it, we'll tell you the things he promised to win the nomination. And a long list of things that are just incredible. And one of the things he promised is to create a network of city-owned and operated grocery stores. And we have actually a parody clip. Somebody put together a parody of what would look like, and it's really quick. It's only 45 seconds, but it's a great parody of what a city-owned and operated network of grocery stores would look like. If we have time, we're going to tell you about a trend, and this is related to him winning the nomination, of how the political affiliation of big city mayors has been trending over the past 50 years, and why that trend should scare you if you live in one of those 50 big cities. We'll explain to you what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled last week with regard to the power of district judges and how many liberals and Democrats have done a 180-degree reversal on how they felt about the powers of those judicial powers just a few years ago. Did you hear about that decision by the U.S. Supreme Court?
I did not.
All right, well, good. Well, we'll educate you what the decision was. All right. We'll play a clip of what some Doge team members encountered when they visited the U.S. Institute for Peace. Did you even know that we had a federal agency called the U.S. Institute of Peace?
I did not.
Do you think we really need a U.S. Institute of Peace?
I don't think so.
Okay. Have you heard about something called alligator Alcatraz?
I have not.
Well, we'll tell you about alligator Alcatraz. And we'll play a clip of the vice mayor of Los Angeles urging local street gangs to take up arms and attack ICE agents if they come into their neighborhoods. Did you hear that one?
I did not.
All right. And our taxpayer lead shot comes from Alabama, where a gas station store manager shoots and kills an armed 17-year-old thug who tried to rob him. And this is a classic play stupid games, win stupid prizes. All right. All right. All right. Our quote of the week, and this is anonymous, although this sounds like who's the guy on the radio, does the talk show host about how to, how to save your money, get out of debt. There's a guy who has a national
Oh,
talk.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
This sounds like Dave Ramsey. And the quote is, and think about how true this is, acting rich is how you go broke, and acting broke is how you can become rich. Think about that. Isn't something that Dave Ramsey would say?
Yeah. Yep.
How many people run up massive credit card bills trying to impress their friends, driving fancy cars, taking vacations, flying first class, and then they
Mhm.
wind up with, $50,000 of credit card debt?
Yep.
So I think that's great advice. Acting rich is how you go broke, and acting broke is how you can become rich. Now, it's not a guarantee you'll become rich, but it's how you can become
That's how
rich.
you save money.
Try to be said, be frugal.
Yeah.
Don't make it a goal to spend your entire paycheck every week. All right. So we're going to get your opinion. Here's a report. And by the way, do you know who Ben Shapiro is?
Yes.
All right, he's a commentator. He's got his own.
Yeah.
So here's Ben Shapiro, and he's playing. He's going to play a clip of a LA TV news reporter, and they're showing videos of these burning cars in the street, and the reporter saying this is not violence. This is just people having fun. Here we go.
Over on local news, there was, believe it or not, a reporter who was watching the footage of all of this go down. And this reporter suggested this is not violent. All of these burning cars, this is not violent. Burning cars is just fun, you see. I don't know about you. I don't have fun by setting cars on fire. But according to this reporter at ABC7, this is not violence.
It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
It's all
So is that worthy of
I
this?
don't understand how that's fun.
No, well, obviously it's not fun, but is that worthy of the stupidest thing I've heard all week?
Yeah, because that is not
Have
fun.
you heard that before today?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay, so you think that's a good one. Now,
Yeah.
here's the next. Now, here's what I said was the runner up, but maybe this should have been the winner. Now, again, this is a Senate hearing, and it's not our favorite senator, John Kennedy, but it is Senator Tom Cruise. And it's a hearing about fossil fuels and whether we should extend the electric vehicle subsidies and whatnot. And this witness, now the Democrats were able to call their own witness, and this is the guy that they chose. I believe his name is David Arkush, Arkush. And this is the witness that the Democrats chose as one of their key witnesses. And you tell me how stupid this is. There we Here we go.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. One final bit of questioning for you, Mr. Arkush. Define for this committee what homicide means.
Oh, sure. So homicide is a legal term that refers to, it's essentially a blanket term for any form of unlawful killing. And an unlawful killing is causing death with a culpable mental state. Causing a death means substantially contributing to it or accelerating it. And a culpable mental state could be negligence, knowledge, recklessness.
And by the way, and Senator Ted Cruz was a federal prosecutor, so Ted Cruz knows what homicide is. All right, so here we go.
So you wrote an article in 2023 entitled, quote, Climate Homicide, Prosecuting Big Oil for Climate Deaths. In that article, you argue that oil and gas executives could be prosecuted, not just sued, but criminally prosecuted for homicide, for murder, based on climate change. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, I would be careful with the wording because murder, again, is a technical term. And definitely we're not arguing that they could be prosecuted for first-degree murder. That's killing with, intent.
But you want to put them in prison for homicide, lock them up, treat them as criminals, put them in. Murderers people who commit homicide get put in jails with violent criminals. And your position is this is a reasonable and rational thing that we should put the people leading the energy companies in America, producing 8.5 million jobs, we should arrest them and throw them in jail. Is that correct?
It could be the case that some executives should be prosecuted in that way. Of course, you can't put a corporation in jail, so there are other remedies in that situation.
But you can put human beings in jail, and presumably you'd put the corporate officers in jail.
Yes, you can.
You'd prosecute them for murder. So don't let there be any ambiguity. And by the way, Senator Whitehouse was really eager to make clear that you're the minority witness. You're the witness he wanted. He was eager to introduce you. I'm going to go on the record as saying that is a moonbeam wacky theory that you want to prosecute people creating jobs and producing energy for murder. Let me ask you, Mr. Arkush, how did you get to the Capitol today?
So here's what I want to tell you.
How did you get to the Capitol today?
I took an Uber.
You took an Uber.
Yep.
Now, was that in an automobile?
Yes.
Did that automobile have gasoline in it?
Yes. This is very, very cute. I see where this is going.
So I'm glad you think it's cute. Under your theory, you emitted carbon emissions.
Yep.
Should you be arrested in this room right now and prosecuted for murder?
No.
Why?
That's not what the law holds.
So tell me why, because you're willing to say the guy who sold you the gasoline should be prosecuted for murder. You're the one that benefited from it. Couldn't you have ridden a bicycle or maybe like some fairy dust to get here?
The guy.
So, first of all, do you think that should have been the stupidest thing we heard all week?
This is a ridiculous argument that's going nowhere.
Now, by the way, so here's
this is reaching. This is definitely reaching.
I think it goes beyond reaching. I think it's a horribly flawed argument. And here's my point. The simple production of crude oil does not create a lot of CO2 emissions.
The use of it.
It's the use of it, right? I mean,
yeah.
By the way, crude oil
the Uber driver who used it.
Right. It's the usage. It's the burning.
Yeah.
But you want to process, but again, crude oil, okay, they make asphalt out of it. They make shingles out of it. They make plastics out of it. Okay, so the fact that I took some crude oil out of the ground creates, virtually no measurable emissions in the global scheme of things.
Yeah.
It's the burning of those fossil fuels.
Yes.
So if you think that people should be prosecuted, should it be the people who use and burn fossil fuels, not the producers?
Yes, correct.
And by the way, if you go to any state, let's take California. Who do you think the biggest operator of internal combustion engines is in the state of California?
Probably the government of California.
The state of California. And by the way, and California's been suing oil companies, their own oil companies, for climate change. Well, if we all agree that it's not the production but the use, shouldn't the state of California be naming itself as a defendant in their own lawsuit?
If this is the ridiculous argument they want to go after, then yes, that would be then true. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not the producers, just the users. Mm-hmm. And the state of California, you operate more motor vehicles than any other entity in your state. You are the biggest consumer of the single biggest consumer
They
of
need
fossil
to follow
fuels.
their own rules, their own policy, that if they want everybody to have an electric vehicle, and furthermore, we've had this conversation about if you want to have an electric vehicle, that electric vehicle should be charged by a renewable resource such as wind or solar, not through plugging it into an outlet that takes
from a gas or a coal plant, right?
Yeah,
and I in addition to wind and solar, I would put nuclear in there.
Yeah, nuclear too, whatever, but not electricity that's been made from fossil fuels. So they need to do that. And we've talked about Northern California being cold, and how can you run your snowplows up in Tahoe?
You can't.
Exactly.
And there's no such thing as
and your school buses up in Northern California where it snows.
And there's no such thing as a viable electric snowplow.
Yeah.
A snowplow would run for about 15, a battery operated snowplow would work for about 15 minutes.
Yeah. So they need to start following their own rules and realize how ridiculous their own rules are.
Yeah. So anyway, so you think that should have been the stupidest thing
I think so.
Oh, and the other one should have been the runner-up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, for those who haven't heard, there is a self-avowed communist or socialist, whatever, named of Zorhan Mondami. And he ran on a platform. There's an old saying, it's tough to beat Santa Claus in an election. He promised the people of New York free buses. We're going to freeze all the apartment rents. We're going to set up a network of city-owned and operated grocery stores. We're going to freeze your taxes. And oh, by the way, and how racist is this? And we're going to increase the taxes, the property taxes and income taxes on white people. Rich white people. How racist is that?
Mhm.
Can you hear me? Because I just
I
had
can't get over that he won.
all right. But
Yes, I can hear you. I just cannot get over that he won.
yeah, rich white
I've been
people.
following this race and I can't believe he won.
And by the way,
Mhm.
and the way he would do that, by the way, right now, by the way, people who live in $1 million homes or condos in New York City already pay because right now you've got a property tax rate. And so let's just make up numbers. Say it's 3% of your property value. Well, if you live in $1 million or 2 million or $5 million penthouse, 3% of 5 million is a lot more money than 3% of 300,000. So they're already paying, way more in property taxes than anybody else in the city. But no, he wants to have a differential rate. Like if your home is worth, or a home is worth less than 500,000, your property tax rate will be X. And if it's worth more than $1 million, it'd be Y. And he
Mhm.
literally come out and says, and we're going to pay for this by increasing taxes on quote rich white people.
Mhm.
It just blows my mind. And this racist, socialist racist won the Democratic primary. And again, in New York, if you win the Democratic primary, you're almost guaranteed to be the next mayor of New York. Now, somebody put together a great parody um, of what would happen, in fact, if he actually went ahead and by said, well, how are you? Because somebody said, well, how are you going to pay for? How are you going to pay for these grocery stores? How are you going to make up for the lost revenue for free? But because nobody ever in New York, there'd be no more. You just get on the bus and you ride. They wouldn't collect the fare. He said, well, we're going to tax those rich white people. So somebody put together a parody of what his network of city-owned and operated. By the way, when I say city-owned and operated grocery stores, just think about your local Department of Motor Vehicles.
Mhm.
Can you see that in your head? How those
Oh
two
yeah,
things
it's a
work? All right,
nightmare.
the nightmare. So here's this parody of they call it the name of this clip is Comrade coming soon, Comrade Grocer, New York City. Here we go, Comrade Grocer.
Soon to a neighborhood near you. Comrade Grocer. Comrade Grocer is a triumph of decolonized supply chains.
It's not just a supermarket, it's a lifestyle. Part of the New York City Government Bureau of Equitable Rationing. We're open 4 days a week from 9 to 4.
4 days a week from 9 to 4. And by the way, the background is, it's all broken bottles and trash and litters. Here we go.
I lost 30 pounds just waiting in line. This store saved my health and my marriage. Comrade Grocer gave me a reusable bag, a can of meat, and a sense of shared despair. Dismantling systemic food privilege, one meal at a time.
There's no fruit. But there's also no expectations.
Some call it scarcity. I call it mindful consumption. Is this all we get for the week?
Sure, the shelves are mostly empty, but so was my heart before Comrade Grocer.
I finally feel seen. Coming soon.
So the sign you couldn't see it, but the equitable rationing. So producer Susan, can we get the clip of this
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
up on the website?
But so keep in mind though, he was endorsed by AOC and
Yep.
AOC won her seat on the as a US representative. So it's scary though that people don't realize how would he actually pay for all this stuff? The money
But
has to come from somewhere.
what happens? You read when you were little, you read the fable of the goose that laid the golden egg, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what happens, if you try to squeeze, so much money? Do you think any of these people have the ability to move, just pick up and, say,
No, they don't.
of course they know. No, the rich people do.
Yeah. And they will.
They
If
will. By the way, a lot of people don't realize this. In 2023, there were 6,700 millionaires and billionaires renounced their U.S. citizenship and just didn't move out of New York. They actually renounced their citizenship and left the United States and went to a different country that was friendlier to their money. So if you want to start an exodus the same thing happened in California where rich people started moving out of California. And during COVID, we already saw rich people leave New York City for New Jersey. If he goes ahead with this, I think we're going to see a stampede of rich people
Yeah.
leaving New York. And the net result, by the way, will be not more tax revenue, it'll be less tax revenue. Because you can't make up for it.
Yeah.
So which by I'm going to talk maybe if we
I mean,
time.
we have seen over and over, we see over and over that the socialism approach does not work, and we're not learning from our own mistakes.
It killed the city of Baltimore and it's killing the city of San Francisco. We talked about San Francisco a few months back, how their office vacancy rate is 30%, and all the local stores and shops are closing because they depend on that lunch crowd in the restaurants. And
Yeah.
and the city of so city of Baltimore is, for all intents and purposes, it's on life support. San Francisco's
Yeah.
following right behind. If this guy follows through, it'll New York City will be right on their heels. Now, so let's talk about the bigger picture. Somebody published a study last week. They took the 50 largest cities in the United States and they said, what is the political affiliation of the mayors? You want to guess what the political affiliation of the majority of those 50 large cities is?
Democratic.
Yeah. 43 out of 50 are run by Democrats.
Yep. Not
And
surprised.
only now, so and let me just give you some crime stats. Now, the national homicide rate is roughly about 5 per 100,000 people. So, what's the population of State College, Pennsylvania?
About 200,000.
So that means that in a typical year, maybe they would have 10 deaths. Is that
No, we have way less than that.
right? Way less than that, but
Way
in a
less
city,
than that.
right? Where how is it getting up to 5 per 100,000? Well, let me rattle off. Here are the top 8 cities, and then remember, 5 per 100,000 is the national average. Well, what's driving it up? Well, City of Chicago, 21 and a half per 100,000. Philadelphia, 22.8. Kansas City, 28. Detroit, 32. Baltimore, 35. Washington, D.C., 41. St. Louis, 48. New Orleans, 54. Each one of those cities has a homicide rate 400% or more higher than the national average. That's why it's 5. If you took out those 8 cities, we'd be down around a 3. So, but what is driving? I haven't figured this out yet. What is driving? And by the way, in the past 20 years, we've had several big cities flip from red to blue, but in the past 40 years, not a single city has flipped from blue back to red. So the question I have, what is it that is driving? What is the underlying reason that all of these big cities, one by one, are turning blue and staying blue forever? You want to render your
I don't
opinion? 'Cause I
know.
don't have an answer.
I don't know.
Well, it's scary because obviously it's a long-term trend, and if you live in or near a big city, if it hasn't already turned blue, it's going based on this trend data. If it hasn't already turned blue, it's going to be blue, and once it turns blue, um, it's not it's scary once it turns blue. So
I
if it,
will say, very interesting thing happened this election is that our town has been blue for a very long time, and we turned red this year,
fantastic. Well,
and it
New
was
Jersey
shocking.
actually has
It
a
was shocking.
New Jersey has a gubernatorial race this November, and
Mhm.
it's going to be interesting to see if and the incumbent mayor can't run for reelection, so it's going to be a new Democrat candidate versus a new Republican. So it's going to be interesting to see if New Jersey could turn back red. That would be just
Yeah.
a sea change in terms of political. And by the way, in the
I
last
think it was Chris Christie was your last.
right, but what's interesting in the last presidential election last year, 6 formerly blue New Jersey counties flipped to red. So maybe there's some hope, but if not, if every big city in America becomes blue, I don't think it bodes well for the future of this
Well,
country.
and we did also see a big part of California turned red this year. Now, of course, the two major cities in California, Los Angeles County and San Francisco,
Run by
remains
Democrat
blue.
mayors. Run by Democrat mayors.
Yeah, and those two cities unfortunately carried the entire state. So although the whole rest of the state was red, those two cities kept the state blue.
Right. Well, by the way, since you
But
brought
if
up
you look
Los,
at the by county, the state was mostly red.
yep. But since you brought up LA, we have a clip. Now, Los Angeles has a position called the vice mayor. So this woman, her name is Gonzalez. She's not the mayor, but she's the vice mayor. So in other words, if the mayor became incapacitated or whatever, or resigned, she would become the mayor. And here she is um, urging street gangs, which, by the way, have many illegal aliens in them. She's urging them, how come you guys aren't taking up your arms against ICE agents when they come into your neighborhood? So listen to what she's advocating.
Nothing, but I want to know where all the cholos are at in Los Angeles. 18th Street, Florencia. Where's the leadership at? Because you guys are all about territory, and this is 18th Street, and this is Florencia. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood. And now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang that.
And what she's talking about is that when you're a gang, you tag the buildings to let everybody know, hey, this is our territory. And she's saying you're tagging everything up. And how come you're not doing something about these people coming into your territory? Let me play that.
Now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up. We're out there like fighting our turn, protecting our turn, protecting our people. And like, where you at? Bien calladitos, todos los chulitos. I'm like, dude, they're running amok all up on your streets and in your city.
She's calling them your streets in your city.
And Pete, when the big gang guns come in, nothing but like quiet, and we're out here, the regular ones that have never been jumped in, out here calling things out, trying to organize people, trying to do the thing. So don't be trying to claim no block, no nothing. If you're not showing up right now, trying to like help out and organize, I don't want to hear a peep out of you once they're gone, trying to claim that this is my block. This was not your block. You weren't even here helping out. So whoever's the leadership over there, just put your members in order.
So how irresponsible is that for the vice mayor of New York urging street gangs to take up arms against ICE agents who come into their neighborhood? And again, blue city, blue vice mayor. I just shook my head. How can an elected official be so irresponsible, urging street gangs to literally start shooting? She didn't actually say start shooting, but you know what she meant. This is how come you're not protecting how are you going to protect your territory? Well, you start shooting back. You start shooting people. So anyway,
that's very irresponsible.
Right. Anyway, I don't think anything's happened to her. She still has her position. So that's the vice mayor of New York. And is that another link you could put on the website if anybody?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. How much time we got?
About 7 minutes.
All right, good. We got time for this. So big Supreme Court decision last week. And what it was is ever since Trump was sworn in on January 21st, he's been trying to do all these things. Now, you've heard about federal judge saying, well, you can't do this, and they issue a nationwide injunction. There are 94 judicial districts, federal judicial districts in the United States, and those 94 judicial districts are staffed by 677 appointed federal judges. So there's roughly 6 or 7 judges per judicial district. And what the opposition has been doing, they've been going to a district where there's a lot of Obama and Biden appointed judges. They find one they like, and they say, hey, we think this is unconstitutional. The president is overstepping his authority. And that judge, it could be in Podunk, Iowa, it could be, some judge in California. And that judge has been issuing an injunction saying, no, you got to stop deporting those people. Oh, you got to rehire all those people you fired. Oh, you can't cut funding to this. And the Supreme Court last week said, no, you district judges cannot issue nationwide injunctions. You can't. Now, if you want to issue an injunction that it can't happen in your district, you go ahead and do that. but you can't issue an injunction that precludes that from happening anywhere in the entire United States. And the liberals are they're just going insane. Oh, they're taking away, now, and all these crazy arguments. Now, well, here's the real hypocrisy. When Biden, now the Republicans used to do the same thing. Biden would issue a mandate, and the Republicans would go find some conservative district judge somewhere, and they would get that district judge to issue an injunction and stop Biden. Well, that was just as crazy, but it was, tit for tat. Well, Associate Justice Elena Kagan um, addressed this, and she was giving a speech at the Northwestern University. Well, in that case, here's what she said. Well, she basically argued that this was not good policy and it can't be right. Let me see if I can actually find her words. Here's the president and or Congress has determined something to be a national policy, and just one district court judge stops it. And then you combine that with the ability of people to forum shop, meaning judge shop, and go to a particular district court where they think that will be the result. And you look at something like that and you think, this can't be right. That one district court has the power to stop a nationwide policy. Well, so that was her 2023. The Supreme Court decision last week was 6-3. She was part of the three that dissented, and she wrote this scathing minority dissent. She argued the exact opposite, that district court judges should absolutely have the power to issue a national injunction. And yet in 2023, it's a long, long speech, and I don't want to play it, but I just quoted you her words that she didn't think it was right that a single district court, and this is back when, again, Republicans were roadblocking Biden with the same tactic. So, I think she wins the Hypocrite of the Year award. But again, that was a big Supreme Court decision that individual district court judges can no longer issue national injunctions against anything the president wants to do. So I'm surprised. So you didn't hear about that? You didn't?
I didn't. No.
What do you think about that ruling by the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think the Supreme Court was right.
I think the Supreme Court was right as well. All right. One more good. We haven't heard from the Doge team in a while, and this is a quick clip. Remember, we talked about the National U.S. Institute for Peace, which you and I didn't even know existed, but it's a quick 90-second clip. Here's what they discovered when they went to the U.S. Remember, by the way, last month we talked about how they got locked out of the U.S. Agency for African Development. They had to get the U.S. Marshals to force the people to unlock the door.
Yep.
Well, here's what happens when they went into the U.S. Institute for Peace.
We got into their headquarters, we found that their chief accountant had actually deleted over 1 terabyte of accounting records from several years. So you'd have to ask the question, well, why would somebody?
Now, by the way, how much data is a terabyte?
A lot.
They deleted 1 terabyte of accounting information going back several years. And why did they do that? Well, let's find out.
Do that. The Doge team, fortunately, was able to recover that data with the help of a few great employees at the Institute of Peace. And I think the most troubling thing was they received $55 million a year from Congress, and any money that went unspent, instead of returning that to Congress, they would sweep it into a private bank account, which had no congressional oversight. And that's what they would use to fund things like events at their headquarters and the private jets. And so I think it's a great example because most Americans don't know what's going on at a lot of these smaller agencies. And this is, I think, the most extreme case of some of the wasteful spend that we're finding.
So the agencies are hiding money from you. They're sending it to the Taliban. They have loaded weapons in the department buildings.
At the Institute of Peace.
At the Institute of Peace.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is a cover-up when you guys roll in.
This one, yes, a cover-up.
It's a cover-up.
They did delete a vast amount of financial information. That's really a definition of a cover-up.
Isn't that illegal to delete evidence?
Yes.
Shred documents?
It is. It's certainly illegal to delete accounting records that that Congress would certainly want to know where the congressionally appropriated funds are going from taxpayers.
Against the pros.
He's not a clubs. I will not.
And again, that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's literally hundreds of these little, and he calls them little, $55 million is not, to me, you and me, is not little.
That's not little. That's a lot of money.
But in the scope of the federal government, oh, you have an annual budget of $55 million, you're probably number 330 on the list of federal agencies.
True.
So, but you have to wonder how many more horror stories are there like that out there. We've talked about several. We've talked about USAID. We've talked about the U.S. Agency for African Development, and one after the other. And last week we talked about how many people pled guilty to that bribery scheme. So it's like a cancer that's been growing through the entire federal government. And fortunately, the Doge team is continuing. Those people, by the way, they are on the government payroll. They don't work for Elon Musk. He put that team together, but they are special government employees, and they are continuing their work. And let's
and Elon's no longer around. He's no longer heading up Doge.
No longer heading up
Jerzee
Doge.
Joe, we're running out of time. We only have a couple minutes left.
All right, well, let's go to our Taxpayer Lee Shot, Taxpayer Alabama. I'm not going to play the intro why we call him Taxpayer Lee Shot. And by the way, they interview a guy here, one of the dead teen's neighbors, and he speaks jive, and I can't understand a word he's saying. But let's talk about, here's the Taxpayer Lee Shot from Pritchard, Alabama.
Sirens blare as police find a teen dead in Pritchard. Moments earlier, investigators say the 17-year-old tried to rob the Lucky 7 gas station on St. Stephen's Road. But they say a store manager had a gun too and shot the teen in his chest. After he was shot, the 17-year-old then fled to the 700 block of Lafargue, where he was pronounced dead by medical personnel. Eugene McSwain lives next door to where the teen was found.
He never came out around about 7 o'clock that morning. He's just picking the body up.
Can you understand a word this guy's saying?
I cannot understand him at all.
I'm going to jump ahead.
I don't know them either. This little she hollering, throwing up and doing.
Investigators say the teen was wearing orange gloves and a hoodie. They say someone wearing a similar outfit with the same style gun robbed at the gas station back on June 9th.
Yeah. Nothing you can do about it but live with today.
Surveillance video from the gas station now under review as investigators hand off their evidence to the district attorney's office.
I think that falls under the heading of play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yes,
unfortunately. And it wasn't his first one. All right. I know we're running out of time, so you want to add anything before we sign off?
Nope. I hope everybody has a safe and happy holiday coming up.
You and I both, and we'll talk next week. But anyway, so I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about these things. And I hope you found some of these topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, give producer Susan a day or two, and you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jerzee being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee. If you want to send me an email with a question, a comment, or you want me to send you one of these links directly, just send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com, and I'll be happy to send you one of those links directly if you don't want to go to the website. And if you want to get put on our weekly distribution list, again, just send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com, and I'll add you to our distribution list. That way you won't have to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts to find the podcast. So, producer, anything, Susan, you want to add before we sign off?
Nope.
All right. Well, I will talk to you next week then. You take care and enjoy your weekend.
You too.